Maybe you've seen it, the bust of Nathan Bedford Forrest, prominently displayed between the House and Senate chambers. Congressman Jim Cooper wants to change that.
Well, let's put him in a museum where he belongs.
Born in Tennessee, Forrest served as a Confederate general. He also was the first leader of the Ku Klux Klan.
I think all symbols of hatred really need to stop being promoted by government.
At the moment, it's just about a flag. But the outrage over a symbol of the American Confederacy has naturally expanded to other items displaying and wearing not just the flag, but other symbols, including human ones. And it has led some people to pause and question, when does proper outrage turn into a witch hunt? Let's welcome to Midpoint the Fiscal Times conservative columnist who has spent many years covering Wall Street and thus deserves a touch of sympathy always, Liz Peek, joined by Democratic strategist and executive director at the Travis County, Texas Democratic Party, J.D. Gins. I thank you both for joining us. And Liz, let me go ahead and begin with you, because now we have a nationwide movement to strip symbols of the Confederacy from public parks, buildings, license plates, internet shopping sites, retail stores, museums, busts. Now, the simple question is this long overdue, or is this a knee-jerk?
Well, look, I think that the murder of 9 Black people in a church in Charleston was cause for some overreaction, probably. But I don't think it is an overreaction. I think it's a good thing that people are speaking out both on the left and the right and condemning any kind of symbol that reminds us of the kind of racial animosities and hatred that was born out of slavery, that has colored our history and so forth. That said, there will be a point at which it tips over into foolishness, in the sense that we cannot deny our history. We cannot, the statue you mentioned, the first member of the Ku Klux Klan, yes, I don't think we need him in our nation's capital, but I've also heard that they're trying to take away the statue of Jefferson Davis. You know, come on, we're not going to try to obliterate our history here. That's what ISIS does. ISIS obliterates history. Presumably, we can learn from our history. We should celebrate the fact that, in fact, more people died in the war to free slaves than in any other conflict in American history. Some of those things are good to remember, and it's important for young people to know them. So my guess is, you know, this is sort of a bandwagon for political reasons, and because everyone is so outraged about these murders, it has really caught fire. I think at some point we do need to take a step back and say, enough.
All right, so J.D., where do we draw the line?
I don't think we need to draw the line, and I don't think this is bandwagon. I appreciate the fact that now, after a horrendous tragedy, people are starting to take credence to what millions of Americans and millions of African Americans have already said, that these symbols are offensive. Right here in Austin, we're having a debate about taking down the Jefferson Davis statue on the South Wall of the University of Texas campus, and it should come down. It's unfortunate it took people dying for conservatives to want to recognize that this is offensive symbols that mean something to millions of people, millions of Americans. And to say that taking down Jefferson statue is the same as ISIS is just out of this world crazy.
All right, Liz, would you like to answer J.D. back, because he did put in there that this is time for conservatives to reach a certain point?
Yeah, I don't think this is a question of conservatives versus liberals. I think it's a question of some people whose families are from the South and they celebrate the Southern heritage and so forth. You know, come on, this is, I think there's an overreaction taking place with just the kind of rhetoric that you just exemplified. When I talk about ISIS, I'm not equating ISIS to people removing flags. All I'm saying is our history is important. Let's not get rid of it totally.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to something else we have here. Okay, wait a minute. J.D., you got an answer? Go ahead. I'll give you 30 seconds.
It's for us to celebrate Southern heritage and be proud of where we come from, that don't revolve around symbols that are offensive to millions of people. And, you know, if you want to celebrate the heritage of the South and the people who declared war against Abe Lincoln when he liberated the slaves, that's fine, but there's plenty of other ways outside of Confederate flags and statues of Confederate soldiers to celebrate the Southern heritage.
I will just say this much, that I do have liberal friends themselves who defend the Confederate flag. We'll leave that for another time as well. Let's move on here. Senator Pat Toomey from Pennsylvania, he's going to give the background check measures, the gun background check measures, another try. All right, J.D., to you first. Is this, again, knee-jerk? Is this something that needs to be discussed now? And not only that, where is he going to go from here?
You know, I don't think anyone's coming to take your guns, but I think everybody sees these kind of tragedies and wonders, how do people who are so mentally ill end up with guns in their hands? looking for background checks at gun shows is just common sense. We don't need to make sure that every single person who wants to buy a gun with unfettered access has the opportunity to do so, because sometimes you end up giving it to a 21-year-old kid who's mentally ill and goes in and shoots up the church. So background checks are common sense. The NRA lobby might lose this one finally, and it's important that we have common sense legislation around guns. I'm from Texas. People in Texas, liberals and Democrats, we love our guns, but we want to make sure that people who don't deserve to have guns or not prepared to handle them correctly don't get them at a gun show.
Liz, 1 minute to you. Final thought.
Okay, I'm actually going to surprise you by saying that I don't think there's anything wrong with background checks. I think people, again, as you've said, who are mentally unstable should not have guns. I think we've seen that over and over. By the way, the same is true of any kind of weapon. And unfortunately, we cannot police this. I must say there was an attack in New York City yesterday, machete-wielding guy who's been arrested for 7 other kinds of events. What is he doing out on the street? I mean, there's an awful lot of things I think we need to question about keeping people safe, and background checks are one of them.
Postscript to this as well, I come from a family that has always had weapons in the house. They've always been safe. I have zero problem with a background check. Absolutely none. Liz Peek and J.D. Gins, I want to thank you both for being here. We'll do it again real soon. Take care.
I hope so. Thank you.
All right, now let's ask you. Let's get your opinion on all this. Not just the gun issue as well, but what's happening with regard to the furor over the Confederate flag. Send your comments to us on email, Facebook, Twitter. We'll read, we'll talk, we'll react. You get a chance to tell us what you think. Coming up next, the immigration reform deadline, or else. We'll explain that and a whole lot more when the fastest 60 minutes in news continues.